John Wayne ate steak. That was my first line. First line of the first episode of a television series called Good Eats, which premiered in July of 1999. But the pilot episode, called Stake Your Claim, was actually filmed in August of 1997. And I say filmed because we actually shot it on film. It just goes to show you how long ago it was. Anyway, during that program, I only cooked one thing, which was unheard of for culinary shows back in those days. I cooked a ribeye steak. And I came up with a method to mitigate or reduce or isolate out unknowns. So I seared it on both sides in a very, 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 very hot cast iron skillet, and then I finished it in the oven. Trying to stay away from the fact that none of us really know what gas cooktops are doing, right? It's a little ring of fire, it's a big ring of fire, it's high, it's lit, who knows? So I was trying to weed out the unknowns, and I think it worked fine. The recipe's been well reviewed for 29 years. But, last week in an airport, a fan came up and he asked me, "Alton, do you still cook your ribeyes that way?" And you know what I said? No, never. I never cook them that way. And the reason is that so many of the unknowns back then are now knowable because of changes primarily in technology, which we'll get to. So I'm going to do this over again today on Alton Brown Cooks Food. I will be remaking my current recipe, procedure rather, for a ribeye steak. The way that I really do it. And I'm breaking this down into the meat, the heat, and the method. We'll begin with the meat, which of course comes from the beef critter. Now, as you can note, this is not a steer. Steers don't have, well, cows don't have the spigots either, but the underlying plumbing is not something that a steer has. Steer has horns though. We have, this one has been broken down into its primal cuts, the chuck, the shank, the rib, the short loin, sirloin, round, short plate, and what have you. Now, the general rule with beef critters is the further from the horn and the hoof, the more tender. So if we literally were like to, measure the furthest distance from a horn and a hoof, we would be right here in the rib primal. The rib primal sits right in between the short loin, where we get things like strip steaks and tenderloins, and the chuck, which can actually be very, very tender back here. In fact, the ribs, the actual ribs, start up in this section and move into this section. The rib, very tender, very flavorful, which is why I imagine it is America's favorite steak by far. It is the number one steak that is served by steakhouses, and it is the number one steak purchased in grocery stores, despite the fact that it can be darned costly. Getting the most out of it, well, let's say that there are some advantages and disadvantages. One of the great advantages is that it's fatty enough to stand a little bit of overcooking without any real dryness. The challenge comes from the fact that every single steak cut off of the ribs in that primal are different. They're different steaks. This is not something that I dealt with on that show, but come on, I was 12 and just getting started. Don't go back and look at it. My hair, the clothes, it's just terrible. Anyway, so we're going to dive into this now. So I'm just gonna grab my steaks and we'll get to work. Let's now take a look at two random ribeyes and see what the differences are. See if we can figure out where they came from on the critter. All right, now, sample one, okay? Made a little plate to help out. Here, there are clearly four muscles. This is the eye, ribeye, the longimanus dorsi. Delicious. It tends to remind people, or at least me, of a tenderloin, so not my favorite muscle. Then we've got the spinalis dorsi, this kind of crescent-shaped piece right here. This is referred to as the cap, and it is highly desirable, especially by serious beef connoisseurs. So, typically the bigger that is, regardless of where it came from, that's considered wonderful. Now, but this tells us a lot. This little muscle is called the complexus, and it gets bigger as you head towards the head of the animal, into the chuck. And then we've got the little castarum here. It's fine. It's a tasty bite or two, but it's not something people really pay a lot of attention to. So I'm going to guess, just by looking at this composition, that we're talking about probably a steak from the 8th rib, maybe the 7th, but I'm thinking the 8th. Let's take a look at another. Okay, here is another sample. Bought at the same time, same grocery store. Here we've still got the longimanus dorsi, but notice it's larger now. Okay, the complexus is totally gone, and the spinalis, although longer, is kind of shrinking in breadth. Castarum's still there, so I'm going to guess this came from around the 10th rib, heading back towards the loin of the animal. Which to cook? Look, they're both delicious. I would say that I would probably, if I was going to be slicing it and serving it on a platter for a couple of people, I would probably want the 10th rib model, simply because it's going to carve easily and be more uniform on a plate. If I'm going to just cook it and plop it onto the plate like a caveman, which I totally am, I'd probably go with this 4 muscle model. I think it's just a little tastier, but that's just me. They're both delicious if we handle them correctly. Salt, kosher salt, applied, in my preference, 8 to 12 hours before cooking. You can do less, but more is better. I know there's this old wives' tale. I shouldn't say that. It's not a wives' tale. It's a wrong story about salting meat before cooking. Like, don't salt the meat. You'll pull the moisture out. Yes, that's what I want to do. I want to pull some moisture out. So I'm going to add about a teaspoon to each side of the steak, just letting it rain onto the steak, nice and even. Do this from higher, not lower, okay? So that you get a nice even coating, right? Just leave that there. This is koshering salt, so it's going to stick very well. Yes, I'm going to stick my hand that touched the raw steak back into the salt, because if anything can live in there, well, it can have me. And the same here. Now, some people call this dry brining. It's not dry brining. There's no such thing as dry brining. There is no such thing as a brine that is dry, okay? I call this micro brining. It's like microdosing, except with brine. Because what's going to happen here, of course, is that the salt is going to do its thing, and it is going to pull moisture up out of the surface of the steak. And that moisture is going to dissolve the salt, thus turning it into a brine, a micro brine, but still a brine, a wet liquid into which salt is dissolved. And what's going to happen over time is that a good bit of that brine is going to soak back into the meat. And that is going to elicit multiple changes, but only if we give it time and air. And I know just the place. I speak, of course, of the refrigerator, where we will stash our steak for right around 12 hours. Now, as I said, you could do this with less time. You could do this with, say, 6 hours, especially if you were to employ a small rechargeable fan. USB. I use this to dry meat all the time. And of course, since it doesn't have a cord, you can use it in here. I will come back every now and then, a couple hours, and give it a turn, flip it over, just to make sure that that it is drying evenly. What this is going to do, yeah, I know I've got the door open. What this is going to do is create what's called a pellicle. That is kind of a dry, tacky, protein-heavy surface, which is something that we would want if you were, say, smoking fish. We're not smoking fish, but what it'll also do is increase browning or enhance the Maillard reactions when it's time to put this to the pan. And that will be the next step. Patience. This is an induction cooktop. And we've had these for a while, but they've become much, much more commonplace. And in fact, in my home kitchen, which some of you may have seen from content on other platforms. I don't even have a gas cooktop anymore. I only have induction. And the reason that I'm willing to use this for steak now is that we can dial in exact levels of energy and consistently get there every single time. Now, this particular countertop unit, it's a really good unit. It's made by a company called CookTech, not paid to say that. And it goes from, if you look at the controls here, we can actually set it from 1 up to 20. Okay, now I could set it for actual temperatures, but I don't want to do that because what I can do with 1 to 20 is I can divide it up, right? I can know, okay, I'm going to go medium heat is 10, medium high is 15. Low is, I've got a way to kind of repeat that. And so that's what I do now. The other reason that I cook my steak this way now is because I like to fiddle with it. I like to fiddle with my meat while it's cooking. And so I don't really want to tuck it in the oven, especially because I have found that the more I flip my steaks, the better off they are. So I know that we've talked about induction before. Really exciting to look at, isn't it? But it kind of bears repeating. So induction cooktops do not create heat at all of any type. And in fact, in the early days, demonstrating these things, people would put like $100 bills in between the pan and the cooktop, and it wouldn't catch on fire and all that. What happens is that there's a coil, big coil, copper coil in here, that generates an electromagnetic field. And anything that can respond to that field, like say this cast iron skillet, once it goes into that, becomes part of the field. Now, what does that mean? How does that get hot? Well, it creates hot because it creates heat. There's no such thing as creating hot. Well, let's pretend for just a moment. It's an incredibly lame model, that these little balls are electrons. Now, there are a lot of free electrons kind of floating around inside the structure of a pan like this. And what happens is that this coil, this magnetic field, oscillates. It goes back and forth very quickly, changing polarity thousands and thousands of times a second. And that creates movement inside the pan, so that these guys are all kind of moving around, trying to react to that eddy and those fields. And that movement, of course, creates friction. And because of the friction, we get heat. So the cooktop does not get hot. The pan itself gets hot. And the only reason that the cooktop gets hot at all is because it's a direct contact with all of this situation. So that is what we are going to do. The only potential downside to cooking with induction is that not all pans are created equal. Okay, knowing whether a potter pan is induction compatible is really as simple as just slapping on a magnet. The magnet sticks, and this is just 2 magnets on the back of this thermometer. You could use a refrigerator magnet, any magnet at all. The more firmly it sticks, the better suited it is to induction. So here's my old favorite copper pan. Oh no. Can't use that on induction. Well, actually you could, but you'd have to use a steel or iron diffuser under it, and I don't want to mess with that today. Next up, we've got good old cast iron. Boom! Nothing really works better on induction than cast iron because, again, the ferrous content, very high, clearly. So these things are perfect for induction, but not perfect for all cooking. More of that later. Aluminum, will it induction? No, it will not. Aluminum cannot take part in the magnetic game we're playing, unless, of course, it's got some steel sandwiched in between its layers, which this one does not. Now, here we have a nitrided steel pan. Nitride is basically a new kind of non-stick surface that, instead of being applied, is actually embedded. It's actually, the steel is superheated in a high nitrogen environment so that the nitrogen kind of forms almost like a ceramic surface. Very, very, very tough. Almost completely non-stick, only pretty much last forever, and it is certainly induction ready. Steel, very highly ferrous. That magnet really sticks. And you can see that this was actually designed with induction cooking in mind because it has the induction symbol. Look for that. Enamel cast iron, well, the enamel doesn't change anything. It is still ideal, although I probably would not use this for something like a steak. I might, however, use it it for a stew. And then we've got kind of an oddball here. This is stainless steel, or appears to be. And by the way, stainless steel typically is an alloy, has too low of a ferrous content to really work. But this does. This pan is pretty old, predates Induction, so it doesn't have the symbol, but it does have a nice ferrous layer sandwiched inside its other metals. So it works perfectly fine. So the only way to really know, since I've got other pans that look just like that in the kitchen, is you got to go around and do the magnet test. You've got to do the test. Now, which one of these fine vessels will I be using today? Will it be the cast iron? Will it be the nitrided steel? Or will it be the magnetic stainless? There are temptations everywhere here. Nothing works better on induction than cast iron, but it's not actually a very good conductor. It takes a long time to get hot, and when it does, it stays hot for a really long time. It's not very responsive. And if I was just cooking a steak, that might be okay, but I'm also hoping to make a sauce, a pan sauce at the end. So I might want a little bit more control. I might want a metal that sheds heat a little bit faster. Now, the nitrided steel, that's tempting. It's very tempting because it does tend to shed heat faster than cast iron. It's also less mass. It's got that nice kind of non-stick surface on it, but it's kind of dark, which means when I get small pieces of vegetation in there for my pan sauce, which is going to be a butter, delicious, by the way, I'm not going to be able to really use visual cues to know whether it's ready or not. In other words, because it's a dark pan, it would be easy to burn things once the steak's out. And then there's, of course, this great old stainless steel model, which is a darn good pan, a little on the old side. But the nice thing about it, why should that matter? I've got cast iron around here over 100 years old. Works great. Pretty responsive. Since I'm using induction, I know that the heat source is going to be constant and fairly even, unlike, say, gas on a cooktop. It will give me the visual cues that I need for doing my sauce. So you know what? I'm doing it. I'm going with the old steel. I'm going with the old stainless steel. Yep, it is an oldie, but a goodie. And just want to point out that the magnet sticks very, very, very well to the back and to the sides, which tells me there's a ferrous sandwich going on in there. It doesn't stick quite as well to the face. It does, but I can tell not so much. But that doesn't matter. What does matter is that it's dirty. I think I'll wash this first. Now, here's the other stuff you're going to need. Some unsalted butter, some black pepper, freshly ground, good bit of that actually. Beef tallow, it's kind of a refined beef fat, secret ingredient here. Also 1 shallot, 2 cloves of garlic, and, hold it, I'm gonna hear someplace. A few sprigs of thyme. Let's say 10, it's not like you're gonna count them. Okay, first thing we're going to do is we need to melt this tallow, which is solid at just below room temperature. So just maybe like, oh, that smells good. No, not now. Not now. My cardiologist wouldn't like that. We're gonna say 3 tablespoons of that. And I'm going to put my cooking pan over medium-high heat. Actually, I'm gonna start it just a little bit lower than that, and then I'll boost it at the last minute to prevent splattering. And I'll put that metal measuring cup right in there to melt the tallow. Gonna need a big knife. I need about a tablespoon of shallot, so I'm gonna go about half of this large specimen here. Gonna go with the traditional French cut, not like I do an onion. I actually do the French thing, lateral cut, several cross cuts here, maybe about 4 of those, and then just slice through towards the root end, always guiding the knife with the knuckles of the left hand. Unless you're left-handed, then it's the right hand. As for the, oh yeah, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna throw that over there. Let somebody else clean it up. As for the garlic, I wanna be able to fish it out. So I'm not gonna cut it, I'm gonna crush it lightly, just kind of split it open with a board scraper there, because I'm gonna want to get that out of the sauce. Don't wanna leave it in there. There you go. Perfect. As for the time, you don't have to do anything at all. Leave it on the stem. All right, there's everything. Our sauce, mise en place, except for the butter and one other thing. As to the steak, I'm gonna paint on some of that melted tallow. And you'll notice, shockingly, is that the steak is cold, and I am using this directly from the fridge. It will solidify right onto the meat. And before it sets up all the way, I want to grind on a good bit of that black pepper. I really do think that the tallow is the secret to this whole operation. Gonna flip and repeat on the other side. I do believe in cooking steaks directly from the refrigerator. I don't do any of that letting it sit out at room temperature business. But I do understand it looks a little unusual. More pepper. And don't worry, it does. It looks weird because it's solidified, but trust me on this. Perfect. All right, now I'm gonna boost the heat just a little bit to full medium high, 75% power, right as the meat goes in. And I'm gonna set a timer to go off every minute for 6 minutes because I'm going to turn it that many times. After each minute, it gets a turn. I'm not gonna touch anything for 1 minute. I'm gonna stand here and watch it. Oh, and I'm gonna get myself a clean pan to land on in a minute. Stay there, watch this. This whole method is based on flipping every minute for 6 minutes. Every single minute for 6 minutes. Then we'll temp with an instant read thermometer through the side and see where we are. I don't think we'll be at our target temperature at that point, which is 122, by the way. But we'll see. I think that we'll probably then reduce the heat a little bit. Here we come. There we go. Now, this whole flipping thing is kind of like sipping instead of guzzling, right? Because we're letting the heat come in one side and then we're letting it back off while it goes into the other side. My goal here is to get the best crust that I can get on the surface of this meat while also getting the most medium rare in the middle. The reason that I didn't do this in my original steak show 29 years ago is one, of course, it was in the oven a good bit of the time, but also I'd been trained by French people who, besides yelling at me, had told me to leave the food alone, or that it wouldn't cook in the air. They love to say that. And the truth is moving the food around doesn't really hurt things at all. Oh, and I really like having a timer that repeats the minute countdown so that I don't have to. And now I'm going to sear the sides. This is tricky. Oh, shut up. See, I've got a lot of raw meat here on the side. So I'm just going to kind of slowly work my way around. While I sear this side, I'm going to go ahead and get that temperature reading. I'm going to go straight in the side. You guys can see that. And we are clearly not there yet. So what I'm going to do is turn the heat down to medium low and let it cook for another 3 minutes on each side. We'll coast to doneness. Perfectly fine, and you have to kind of make that adjustment depending on the exact size and weight of your steak. Drain the pan, because I don't want the burned pepper taste and all the tallow. It's done its job. I've got the heat actually turned off right now. There's plenty of residual heat. And I'm just gonna go with 2 tablespoons of butter. And as that melts, it's gonna cool the pan down a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and add the thyme. Plenty of heat in there. The popping, that's the thyme leaves as they fry. The aroma is pretty gosh darn terrific. I wish we'd worked out that smell-o-vision. Since I've got foaming here, but my butter's not quite melted, I'm gonna turn the heat back on very, very low, super low, like level 3 out of 20. So we'll call that very low. I'm not gonna leave that time in long enough to burn. Just kind of park it over here to the side, and then we'll bring the shallots to the party. We'll invite them to the party. Not yet on the garlic. When garlic burns, the party's pretty much over, so I want to be a little careful about that. Low heat now. We let the pan cool down. The time's off to the side, frying. The steak is resting comfortably. Very nice char on that. Very appealing. And I think now would be an okay time to introduce the garlic. Again, crushed. I'm not going to let that garlic cook more than about a minute, because as soon as it turns brown, it turns black. And then the entire dish will taste like burnt garlic, and I don't think I want that. After about a minute, minute and a half, I'm gonna go ahead and start fishing out the garlic. You know what, if you really love garlic, you can leave it and roll the dice. I'm gonna go ahead and take out the thyme, because I don't want a toothpick. And then if there's a secret ingredient, and I'm not saying there is, but if there is, it's ice. Ice is going to, of course, cool things down, keep anything from burning, and also, as the water melts off of the ice, it's going to form an emulsion. This is a procedure called a beurre monté, not a monté à beurre. That's a different thing altogether. This is a beurre monté. So we're basically making a water butter sauce. And I'm going to turn up the heat just a little and just whisk that briskly until the ice cube is gone. I'm using ice because I really don't want any other flavors here. You might be thinking, oh, why isn't he deglazing with, vermouth or something? That's not the same procedure here. The water from the butter, as it melted, did all the deglazing we needed. So this is just about thickening up that butter a little bit. Not too much. All right, killing the heat. There's still just a teeny piece of that ice. There. That can stay there while we turn our attention to the carving process. I like a longish knife for this chore, and I always want to cut on the bias. Now, this is done a little bit more than I would like. I'm going to call this medium. I didn't tip it right, I guess, but I'm okay with medium with the ribeye because there's enough fat to lubricate everything. And I'm probably going to eat all of this anyway, so it's fine. There. I usually transfer to a platter that has been littered with fresh herbs. Just use an offset spatula for that. And, well, we'll just magic it in. Voila, there it happened. And the sauce in this case is very, very important because the truth is I cooked this a couple degrees beyond my usual target temperature. So it's medium instead of medium rare. But that's okay because now it's covered with butter sauce. And quite frankly, it's ribeye. It has enough fat to go to medium. Heck, I may start doing that on purpose. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to go finish that. Is it the ultimate ribeye? No, probably not. After all, it's not prime beef. It's choice. Oh, it's pretty damn good. I'm just going to leave this here so you can watch. See you next time on Alton Brown Cooks Food and then eats it. I lied. I'm not leaving this for you. I'm taking it all.